Hello, welcome to my YouTube. I'm gonna make some changes to how I do stuff here, which is pretty bold because I don't think I've uploaded a video in like a year. So the fact that I'm doing anything at all is in fact a change, but I'll let you into like my thought process later. In the meantime, I'm just gonna make some videos. Do you trust me when I look like a older brother who's teaching you about a fucking conspiracy theory in a blacklit room full of glowy posters? I want to say right off the bat, before I use this subject as the launching pad, I don't think that little Tay should have an OnlyFans account. Controversial and brave, I know. I don't think that it's a thing she made for herself, as I will get into. She comes from an incredibly exploitative family. Shitty family. I don't think this was even her idea. I would not be surprised, considering her brand, if there is never like one lick of porn on that OnlyFans account, right? And that it is all like a troll, but it's a troll that worked because of the exploitative, shitty nature of it. But I am going to use this as a launching pad to talk about some other stuff for a little bit. And I don't want for a second for anybody to think that I'm saying, well, actually, it's a phebophilia. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what I'm trying to do at all. For those of you who are normal and have no idea anything I just said, Little Tay, you may have heard of her even if you're not attaching a face to the name. She was a child rapper a while ago, like back in 2016. She did well, very aggro, she was very trolly, she was a child. There was some like kind of early controversy about like the put on black scent and that sort of thing, right? But then it started to come out pretty quick that like her parents were divorced, her mother was kind of obsessed, and to a lesser extent her older brother were obsessed with making her like a child star basically, and thought that this was like the route to do it. And meanwhile her father wanted her to be a child. Weird, I know. And so there's been a lot of like custody disputes in the last like 9-ish years, and she's basically been going back and forth between getting to be like a normal kid and being like a weird little fucking money puppet for her mom and her brother. Yesterday, August 4th, yeah, because today's the 5th, she launched an OnlyFans, and within about 3 hours she had $1 million worth of subscribers. Now here's the thing, is that I remember when they were counting down the Olsen twins turning 18 on the fucking news, right? So I'm not surprised by any of this, and the fetishization of youth is obviously gross. It's one thing to be attracted to like younger features or younger energy, right? I have been prone to that in my life, right? It's different when like what you are excited about is like that threshold of legality, right? That is something different, almost always predatory in nature. I did want to kind of use this subject as a launching pad to talk about things. I don't quite know how to make a thesis statement yet. This is like a subject that I think about a lot, is like adultism and child's rights and parents' rights. So I'm just gonna start like unpacking ideas and see where I sort of get today, and then I'll probably keep picking it up as I keep unfolding stuff. But I'm trying to make shorter videos instead of just doing like full video essays, because you know what the thing about video essays? I never fucking finish them. First, I want to talk about the prefrontal cortex. So basically the prefrontal cortex is like the front part of your brain, and it has your executive functioning, it has your long-term planning and your long-term thinking skills. It's one of the last parts of your brain to develop. This is an idea that has become more common knowledge in the last like 10-ish years, and it has really like shaped the way that a lot of us think about young adults, about 18 to 25. It's so clearly a concept that has been used for evil. Nobody pays attention to that because it's also used for good, I guess. A lot of transphobes are fixated on the prefrontal cortex and trying to say that, like, you know, because they don't want trans people to be able to transition at all, right? So it's not enough that you can't transition when you're 18. You shouldn't be able to transition until your prefrontal cortex finishes developing. And the issue with that is that there's kind of an understanding that your prefrontal cortex develops until you're 25. But that's not the entire truth. Your prefrontal cortex, the more they research the prefrontal cortex, the more they're like, oh shit, that thing may never stop truly growing and developing. It hits a plateau in your 20s. There starts to be that like sort of offset of your whole body decaying that starts to happen in your 20s, where you're kind of losing stuff more than you're growing it, but it does seem to still be growing and evolving and changing, right? So for one, if we're going to set adulthood as like when your prefrontal cortex develops, we may be very shocked to find that adulthood never truly exists. For one. There was a for two. What the fuck was my for two? For two. There we go. You know what the prefrontal cortex is really affected by? ADHD. Because remember, I said that it has to do with like your executive functioning and your long-term planning, right? So they think that, you know, that plateau might not even happen for people with ADHD until they're in their mid-30s. And again, we're kind of finding that that growth never stops. But let's say that it does turn out that plateau matters and that the growth actually stops there. So people with ADHD aren't adults until they're in their 30s and shouldn't have adult protections and rights until they're in their 30s. They should be infantilized until they're in their 30s. As a 35-year-old with highly suspected ADHD, fuck that and fuck you. 17 years I couldn't vote on elections? Suck my dick. This is an idea that latched too hard is ableist. Which brings me to the next concept, adultism. So adultism is a type of oppressive structure that basically argues that adults are better than children, smarter, more valuable, have more rights, have more autonomy. Adultism is pretty tied up in ableism. I can't even talk about one without the other. There is a theory I read, I can't remember the name of it, I just remember that it was written by Omi and Wana. Basically the theory is that when you have axes of oppression, they reify and create one another, right? So race is gendered. Gender is racialized. A really good example actually is like Black women or Asian men. Black women are women, but they're Black, so they're not truly afforded womanhood because we masculinize Blackness. And meanwhile, Asian men, they are men who are Asian, but we never really truly see them as men because we feminize Asianness. A little difficult to wrap your head around, at least it was for me when I was in college a decade ago. But once it really kind of clicks, you start to see it everywhere. So similarly, disability, and age are very tied up into each other. Some of that is because disability is actually an inevitability in your life should you live long enough. You will sustain injuries, you will sustain decay, like that's inevitable. But it's also because we see childhood as a defect. Our conceptualization of childhood is kind of inherently a disabled understanding. I'm not saying that there's no reality to that, right? You are vulnerable as a child. There are decisions that are beyond your capacity. There are things that are beyond your capacity because your brain is growing and developing and evolving, and because like the very nature of our species, like, you know, we're not deer. We're not born and then we walk within an hour. Like, we spend years and years and years developing our big fucking vagina destroying heads into fucking like genius machines or whatever, right? Let me bring in another thing. I'm sure you love that, right? So like conservatorship, okay? You're probably familiar with conservatorship because it happened to Britney Spears and to a lesser extent Amanda Bynes, right? But basically conservatorship is like when you are disabled to a certain extent that you cannot make decisions for yourself. You are basically like warded into somebody else's care, right? And that person becomes like your legal surrogate and all those things. And like when you have worked with, as I have, like profoundly disabled people, you know that that's something that needs to exist. There needs to be like an ability to create legal interdependence, but you are also aware that like of the problems. Conservatorship can be really easy to get into and really hard to get out of. It is something that is exploited by abusers. Yeah, like it should exist, but perhaps it shouldn't be so easy to have somebody's life be signed away to someone else. It's like the problem is a little more broader and conceptual than like any sort of thing you can actually pinpoint with conservatorship. Should the ability to be independent be this all or nothing? Should the ability to sort of like advocate for yourself and take care of yourself be this all or nothing? Similarly, I feel similarly about childhood, right? What the fuck does this have to do with this fucking rapper? What does this have to do with this like exploited child star? Look, if you've been a kid in an abusive household, or you have been under the care of an abusive caretaker, like, you know, the things that are designed to protect normal people seem to only put you in more danger, only seem to make you more isolated, more at their whim, and then it's hard to get like out and away. I'm just gonna read my exact note here because I put it really well before I got in the shower. My point is, the likes of Little Tay are not protected by desires to expand definitions of childhood unless we are also committed to giving children rights. Because remember, like what I said earlier, it's the thing that comes up for me a lot. Like, okay, we want to change adulthood so that you're not an adult until you're 25. So what's going to happen to 7 years of voters? Right? What's going to happen to 7 years of rental agreements and ownership of things like cars and property? What's going to happen to people that were waiting to get out of their abusive home until they were 18 and now they're 17 and a half and all the laws just changed to 25? And like, I know that like when we're talking about things like Little Tay, or even when we're talking about things like age gap relationships and the morality of age gap relationships, like we're not talking about changing the laws, but aren't we? Isn't that sort of the inevitable like thing that you're talking about when you're talking about these sorts of holes in society, is policy change and how you're going to protect people from these holes in the road? I don't think the hole in the road is that we define adulthood as being 18. Because I think that if we make adulthood 25, in a century, we're just going to have the same fucking creeps who buy your OnlyFans the second you're 25. And they're going to be just as fucking weird about it. Because it's something so much deeper than that. It's something about the way that we conceptualize each other. If you liked what you just saw, you got a thing for very white stomachs, and I'm proud of you. But please consider subscribing to my channel and doing all of the like buttony things. I also am on Threads at Frankie Lord Writes. I'm on Instagram at Oops and Non-Binary. I'm on TikTok at Oops and Non-Binary. I really would just appreciate support. I want to try to like take the content creation a little more seriously, a lot more seriously. Early positive reinforcement. It helps a lot. I start tea today. Yeah. Very exciting stuff. Okay. All right. Bye.